Hello, everybody. Peter Greenberg here, and welcome to another of my Facebook Live Global Travel Updates for the last Thursday in February 2022. We'll start off with the usual housekeeping. If you've got some ideas or comments or questions, just send them right in. We'll try to answer them live today. If not, we'll do it online or on our radio show, Eye on Travel, which airs this Saturday, as you know, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. If you can't find a local station in your area, no problem. You can always go to our website, petergreenberg.com, log on there, and it streams live starting about 5 minutes after the hour of 10 a.m. Eastern. Let's start with the news, and there's a lot of it. Starting in the Ukraine, the Russian invasion overnight. It's a disruptive effort, an act to say the least, and it will have wide-ranging implications in the air travel system around the world. It's already disrupted travel there, of course. All major airlines stopping service to the Ukraine. The airspace is already closed, but it's not just the airspace to the Ukraine, it's the airspace around it. And we've had this happen before there. You may remember the tragic loss of the Malaysian Airlines 777 that was shot down over the Ukraine. But we have other things going on as well. Airlines are now forced to reroute around the area, not just around the country. And if you take a look at all the countries that border the Ukraine, it's a pretty wide area. And out of an abundance of caution, they're steering a very clear path around the region, which means longer flights, in many cases substituting aircraft that have longer ranges, bigger fuel burn, people misconnecting flights. You can imagine all the things that are happening in that region, just in terms of trying to continue safety in the wake of this incursion. This is coupled with fuel prices that are spiking, oil at over $100 a barrel, the first time that's happened since 2014. It's all combining to create an event, if you will, that may last through the summer, even if, as we all hope, this incident or this invasion is resolved quickly. We will watch this space carefully because it does have a ripple effect on a global level. And that means you could actually make the claim that your flight from New York to Kansas might be delayed because of what's going on in the Ukraine. I'm serious. So we will watch it carefully. We'll be reporting on it next week, of course, and online on my newsletter as events warrant. We'll be carefully watching. Now, let's go on to some other things. We have a lot of follow-up stuff from Crystal Cruises. By the way, more than $100 million of money that hasn't come back to passengers yet and may not. We'll get into that. Unruly passengers. Gee, what a surprise. It's still continuing. In fact, let's talk about American Airlines Flight 1775 that was going from Los Angeles to Washington. Well, it didn't quite make it. It had to divert to Kansas City. And let me just show you one of the things involved in that incident. Let's throw that picture up. That was a coffee pot. As a passenger attempted to open the door during the flight, a fight broke out. Passengers tried to restrain him, and in fact, one passenger hit him with that. As you can imagine, they were able to subdue him, but the flight did divert to Kansas City. This is just another incident. And even though the FAA has finally referred 80 different cases of unruly, disruptive, or violent passengers to the FBI and the Justice Department for investigation and prosecution, we haven't seen a lot of prosecutions, even though the no-fly list on individual airlines continues to grow, and it will probably continue to grow throughout the rest of the year. So many of those incidents involving refusals to wear masks, this wasn't one of them, but let's talk about that. We are seeing one after one, state after state, getting rid of the mask mandates, either for outside or even inside. We're seeing that in countries, and we're seeing it on cruise lines. As of March 1st, Carnival is the first major cruise line to drop the mask requirement. We're going to start seeing that eliminated across the board, which then raises the question, what about the looming March 18th deadline for a decision on extending the mask mandate on public transportation, airlines, subways, trains, buses? My guess is within the next 5 days, we will have a decision made by the federal government. They're not going to wait till the 18th. And my guess is with vaccination levels still not where they should be in this country, they'll probably extend them to May 15th or even through June 30th. So we will be watching that as well. But the good news is country after country has not only removed the need for testing in order to get in if you're vaccinated, they've also removed the need or the requirement for arrival testing. Bermuda's removed it. The United Kingdom's removed it. And then in the rest of Europe, we've got France and Germany and Italy and Portugal and Greece, just for starters, saying that if you can prove vaccination, you no longer have to get a negative COVID-19 test to get on the plane. And even better, you don't have to get tested when you land. Now, one more rule that still remains. We talked about this last week. I'll talk about it again. That's the 24-hour rule requiring you to get a negative COVID test before coming back to the U.S. Let's see how long that lasts, because with all these other countries dropping that requirement, it's only a matter of time before reciprocity kicks in and we drop it as well. Of course, this is the week that Australia opened up after nearly 2 years of being closed. That happened on Monday. We're expecting Japan to open up next month. New Zealand a little bit slower, but they think by the end of June, early July, and things are going to start moving, and you're going to start seeing airfares respond in kind by going up. Now, let's talk about airfares. They're still going up at the rate of 7% every 10 days, and I need to remind you that's compounded. So the longer you wait, the worse it's going to get. But I did some fare comparisons this week, and you're seeing Chicago to Paris for $498 round trip. Can't beat that, right? LA to Rome for under $700. So international fares have not caught up yet because it's still out of season. If you're looking for flights in June, July, and August, they will obviously be more expensive. And that's the time not to buy them, but to redeem your frequent flyer miles. That's when you strike, but you do it now while there's still some award seat availability. And they're shrinking that by the hour, guys. I'm not making it up. You need to move quickly and decisively. And don't just pick Paris and Rome. That's not exactly an original idea. There are 196 countries out there. You have strategic alliances with the Star Alliance or the Sky Team or One World. Use them judiciously and strategically, and you will find availability before they increase the mileage or decrease the availability, or both. An update on Hertz. Apparently, they're still throwing people in jail. Let me remind you, if you weren't tuning in last week, what's going on. And it's a question you're going to have to ask every time you rent a car from anybody. Because during the pandemic, people were so desperate to rent a car, they remained desperate in keeping those cars beyond the original contracted date. And when they exceeded the return date, guess what? The rental car companies reported the cars as stolen. And then they returned the car, paid for the car, but the rental car companies didn't do their homework and didn't notify the authorities that the car wasn't stolen. So the next poor slob who rented the car, he gets handcuffed, taken to jail, because the car is still reported as stolen. So from now on, benefit of the doubt here, always ask for them to confirm in writing that the car that you've just rented has not been reported stolen. And one more thing you got to do, but this predates the pandemic. It's just basic common sense. Get your cell phone, make sure you time code the pictures, do a walk around inside the car and a walk around outside the car. It's going to take you maybe 4 minutes. Photograph every surface on the outside of the car, any ding that you see there, any dent, any scratches on the inside or any kind of damage from smoke, even if you're a non-smoker. And go back to the front desk of the rental car company, show them the photos, make sure that they note that on your rental car agreement, so that when you drop it off, you don't get ding from either $400 to a $4,000 repair bill for something you never did. All right? Doesn't take long to do the walk around, but don't come crying to me when you get hit with that bill if you didn't. All right? That's the world of rental cars right now, and it's not pretty. All right. There we have that. Now, the other story I want to talk to you about is there's a ship at sea. It's named the Felicity Ace. Chances are none of you have ever heard of this ship, nor would you have a reason to. It's a cargo ship. Well, it caught fire on February 16th, and it was a pretty big fire. By the way, it's still burning. Today is February 24th? So 8 days later, the ship is still burning, but it is now abandoned. The crew was rescued, and the ship is being towed slowly. It's no menace to any kind of other navigation. However, this ship could represent a whopping $400 million loss. Why? What was the ship carrying? 1,000 Porsches and about 200 Bentleys. Bye-bye. Wow. So if you see somebody selling you a slightly used Bentley in the next 2 weeks with minimal smoke damage, don't take the car. That's assuming the ship stays afloat. But the insurers are already writing it off. They're already writing it off as an excess of $400 million loss. Volkswagen alone got hit for $100 million because it was carrying 4,000 cars, not just 189 Bentleys and 1,000 Porsches. 3,000 other cars. Wild. Okay, now let us get to some of your questions. I'm going to scroll up here and say hello to everybody. Okay, Peter's saying hi from beautiful Madison, Wisconsin. Beautiful, cold Madison, Wisconsin, but we love you anyway. Thomas wants to know, is it still safe to travel to Dubai in March? Yes, it is. Barbara wants to know, can I ask a question here? Yes, Barbara, go ahead and ask it. Lisa says, afternoon, Peter. Hello, afternoon, Lisa. My old buddy Lisa, speaking of cruise ships. Okay, Robin is checking in from Williamsburg, Virginia. Colleen Casey, the statues in the background are lovely, calm, peaceful images. They're so helpful to all of us right now. Ta-da! Okay. Hold on a second. Okay, great to hear the cruise lines are changing the mask policy. Your thoughts? You know what? Look, common sense prevails. I'd still wear them. But remember one other thing. On most cruise ships now, you can't even get on unless what? You're fully masked and you're fully vaccinated. That's the key. So I'm not worried. Lorena says, greetings from Lansing, Michigan. Here we go. Hello from Chicago from Geraldine. Good morning, says Catherine. Clients are asking, should they postpone their cruises this summer to the Baltic, especially lines that call on a Russian port? I would not recommend that yet, but there's a very big caution here. And it would happen whether there was a conflict in the Ukraine or COVID-19 or anything that would qualify as instability. And that is, if you're going to book a cruise, get it in writing what the refund policies are. We talked about this for the last couple of weeks. My favorite 6-letter word is escrow. Make sure that the money that you're spending is not given to the cruise line until you're on the ship. That way, if the cruise doesn't sail, guess what? You're okay, right? And this brings me up to the point of updating you on Crystal. I mentioned $100 million owed to passengers. My good friend Angelo Mpoco really corrected me and enlightened me on Regulation Z. We talked about that last week. I'm going to read you what he wrote me. He said, as long as the original transaction for the ticket was within the last 540 days, not when you booked the original cruise in 2019, that doesn't count. But as long as you booked a cruise or any travel good or service within the last 540 days and you paid with a credit card, you will have chargeback protection over and above what it says in the federal credit law, right? Now, however, you lose those chargeback rights if you booked that cruise in 2020 and then it got postponed and they extended it and they gave you vouchers and they extended it. The whole rule, or Regulation Z as we call it, goes back to the original day you actually paid with the card. It's as simple and as straightforward as that. It goes beyond what the federal credit law says. You may need to remind your credit card company of Regulation Z, but if it's within that 540-day period, run, don't walk, and get your money back. Okay, let's keep going. Hello from Boynton Beach, says Debbie. Hello from Atchison, Kansas. Okay. Joy says, what is the best time to book airfare and go to Greece, Mykonos, and Santorini? Well, there's it depends on when you want to go. You couldn't pay me to go in July and August. Santorini, it's out of control. Trust me on this. When you want to go is September. That's the magic month in the Mediterranean. In fact, it could be considered the magic month everywhere. So if you're going to book in September, you can certainly go and do some comparison shopping now. But my guess is the best time to do that would be in late June, early July for that September, because that's when they'll adjust the fares to the off season, because that's what it's still considered. Okay, here comes from Barbara. Says, when we thought things were getting better, we booked a small group tour to Morocco. The tour starts in 2 weeks. I'm driving myself crazy, still feeling guilty about traveling. You should never feel guilty about traveling. You should be happy about traveling. You should be commonsensical about traveling, but never guilty, unless you're not taking somebody who deserves to go with you. She says, we're both vaccinated and boosted, still wearing masks, but still, is it too early for people to start traveling again? I don't think so. Now, there are other variables here that I can't deal with, that only you can deal with. Your own personal medical condition, any pre-existing conditions, any physical mobility conditions, and of course, where you're going. I mean, are you going to Yemen, Syria, or the Ukraine? Well, we have something to talk about. But Morocco shouldn't be a problem. Okay, hello from snowy Portland. It's snowing up in Oregon. All right. Melissa says, I'm traveling to Bucharest on April 11th to begin 2-week Danube cruise, hopefully. Thoughts? Well, you're sort of in the region there, right? Let's not kid ourselves. But right now, I'd wait about 10 days to 2 weeks before making a final decision. Don't pull the plug yet. Okay, Debbie's doing her 5th cruise. Congratulations. Anne says, I'm leaving for Budapest on March 11th. Do I have to get tested to arrive there and return home on March 25th? Right now, you do. Hungary has not relaxed the testing requirements, even if you're vaccinated. Get the test and go, and you know you got to do one to satisfy U.S. rules on the way back. Okay, Priya is saying she's watching from Irvine. Hello, Lisa. Thank you for that nice note. Anna says fuel prices are going to impact airfare prices. Duh. Of course they are. Fuel is over $100 a barrel in terms of oil. Buy your tickets now. Redeem your frequent flyer miles now. Sherry says we're going to Ireland the second week in March. Should I contact airlines to see if our flight is still as scheduled? Well, you should always do that. But right now, other than maybe some weather issues, your flight should be going as operating. Airlines are not going to cancel flights to Ireland because of the Ukraine, at least not that I know of, at least not now. Sandy says that now that Botswana is dropping the 72-hour PCR and antigen upon arrival, just like Bermuda did, by the way, we have extended our trip to 8 days in Botswana. All right. Very good. All right. Greetings from Richmond, from Jim and Harriet. That's Virginia, by the way. Michelle says, my husband does that every time. He was charged about $450 for something. We're talking about the rental car. Yeah. 2 months later, but had the timestamp photos to prove it. He takes them when picking up and dropping off the car. Your husband's a smart guy. Sandy says, do you think South Africa will be dropping the PCR by September and the U.S. dropping the antigen test by September? Right now, I'd say yes. Patty says 4,000 luxury cars burned. That's exactly what I talked about. Okay. Yes, that's right, Patty. These are $100,000 cars. And Mike says he hopes my new Lamborghini was okay. Yeah, well, not me. That is never going to be me. Okay. Pat says she just read a story from a rental car runner who was charged for cleaning after it was returned. So take those photos of the car at the return also. That's a good point, Pat. I didn't think of it. Good idea. Okay. Sandy says, any more news on the gem for November? Right now, it's still on track. The Grand Egyptian Museum finally officially opening in November, but we'll check in again because they've changed that before. But right now, it's still on track. Okay, Catherine says, for a month trip to Ireland, is it beneficial to have a tour company handle all the details? Well, it depends on how much you know Ireland and how much you want to get around. I'm not a big fan of renting a car in either the UK, Australia, or Ireland or New Zealand because I may not be in an accident, but I might cause a few. You're driving on the wrong side of the road. I'm sorry. I think I'm a great driver, but not on that side of the road. And not to mention the word roundabout. Now, having said that, if you want to do, I would split it up. Do a tour company for certain areas, or if you're with another couple, hire a car and driver. You do it at your own pace. It's not outrageously expensive if you do it right. And because you're doing it at your own pace, you're not being rushed out of a store that you want to see or a museum you want to hang out in or a restaurant that you want to linger in. Okay? Check it out. Terry says, hello from Cereal City. Where would that be? Okay. Patty Ford says cold air has benefits. If you're talking about Madison, Wisconsin, I couldn't agree more. I spent 5 years there. Not a regret in the world. All right. Lisa says, hello from La Mesa, California. Jean says, hello from cold, icy, snowy Tulsa. Wow. Snowing everywhere today, Portland, Oregon, and Tulsa. Lisa says, is there a good way to send money to friends in the Ukraine? Right now, there isn't. You may have seen the story that ran over the wires just about 5 hours ago that their internet's been hacked. I mean, all cyberspace crap going on everywhere now in the Ukraine. Nothing is really being protected. Right now, I would hold off. It's terrible, but you don't want to send it into the void. You want to know that they got it. Not to mention banks being able to process it, right? Wire transfers are not easy. If you take a look at what's going on in Russia this morning, there's so little confidence in what's going on in the invasion that you cannot find a single US dollar in Russia. They've been exhausted at the banks because people have no faith in the ruble now. It's going to get crazy before it gets sane. Okay, Robin says she's in LA. Tanya says, how many miles did you end up flying in 2021? Did I exceed 400,000 miles? Actually, I did. A lot of trips to the Middle East and the Gulf, and that'll do it. What used to do it, of course, were all my trips to Asia, but that was really shut down. Although we're going back, starting in June, I'll be going to Cambodia and to Thailand, which they both have opened up now. Hong Kong is still a problem, but Thailand and Cambodia are open. Okay, Angela says, would I recommend a visit to Paris in June with the current COVID and Ukrainian situations? Well, I have a little news for you. I'll be in Paris in June. We should hook up. Not that way. But the point is, it's not stopping me from going. All right. Now, it's a fluid situation right now. Remember, we're talking Europe. But right now, my guess would be go. If it changes, of course, we will talk about it. Jew is saying hello from Japan, as she always does. Christopher says, any insight on Spain dropping COVID test to enter? And yes, Spain's going to do it. Spain is dropping the COVID test to enter, but we have not yet dropped the COVID test for the return to the U.S. Okay. Gail's saying hi from Pennsylvania, expecting freezing rain tonight. Hope you're in a warm, sunny place. Well, I'm in New York today where it's over 50. Who knew? Wow. Mike says he's taking his 50th cruise next week on the Seven Seas Splendor. That's a great ship, by the way. Ivis is saying hello from Split in Croatia. Barbara's saying thanks for responding. Hope we have a safe, fun trip. And as you suggested, I've already booked our flights for August using frequent flyer miles. Taxes are fully refundable and no charge to return them to my account if something changes. It's a win-win. You did the right thing, Barbara. Willie says, is Royal Caribbean ending the mask requirements too? I'll be on one of their cruises in June. By June, I would fully suspect they will. From a competitive disadvantage, they would want to end the mask program now that Carnival has done it. That doesn't mean it won't come back, but for the moment, I think the cruise lines are all going to follow each other on this one. Okay, hello from Denver, says Evelyn. Have I been to the Cape Verde Islands? Costa wants to know. We are planning to go in September. Any thoughts? Yes, I have. Anybody know where they are? Well, they're on the way to South Africa. And the only reason why I first went was because the plane didn't have the range to get from, let's say, New York to Johannesburg. It had to make a refueling stop in Cape Verde, a very cool place, especially, I mean, it's like one of these great undiscovered places. And all the South African pilots had like condos there because they had to stop there and they were going out and bone fishing and having a great time. You'll love it. If you get a chance, do it. Okay. And of course, Terry's now told us that the cereal capital, as if we didn't know, is Battle Creek, Michigan. You're right, Terry. And she's hanging out with Tony oh, stop it. Tony the Tiger. All right. You want me to say it, Terry? He's great. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Gene wants to know, how many countries have I visited? Well, first of all, does anybody know how many countries there are? Not our trivia question today. I'm going to give you that in a second. There are 196 countries if you go by the United Nations count. And the answer to your question is I've been to 152 of them, which means I have another 44 to go, and I may never get there. Remember, it's not a race. But you asked, there's your answer. And who's counting? Okay. Celebrity cruises, no more masks. So there you go, Debbie. And Celebrity is part of Royal Caribbean, so it's starting. Phyllis says, safer right now, Paris or London. Safer for what? I've never felt threatened in either place. Okay. I'm looking here. Sharon saying hello from Connecticut. Hello back. Let me go back up here and get some more of your questions. Hold on. Here we go. Oh, by the way, let's do our trivia question while I have a chance. Here it is. How long, right this minute, is the longest commercial flight? How long is it? How many hours and how many miles? Who wants to weigh in here? How long is the longest commercial, obviously, nonstop flight? Anybody want to guess? I'll give you a second. I'll give you a hint. It was the longest flight 2 years ago, then they canceled it during the pandemic, and it's now back. That might give you some indication. All right, I'm not seeing anybody weighing in here. Let's see. I'm scrolling all the way down. All right, now I'm getting some. Now, okay. Sharon saying 17 hours. You're wrong. Preya saying 19.5 hours. You could be right. I'll explain. Patty Ford saying 18 hours. Geraldine saying 19. Everybody's coming in around 19. The answer is, depending on which direction you're going, it's about 18. It's the Singapore Airlines flight from Singapore to New York or Newark, depending on how you're counting. That is one long flight. I call it an 8-movie flight. So there you have it. All right, now you know. And now let's go to the photo of the week. Oh, by the way, let me give you the length of that flight. It's 9,537 miles. 9,537 miles. And there you go. Singapore Airlines. Okay. Shall we go to the photo of the week? Let's put it up. Trying to see if it's up on my screen. There it is. And by the way, I had nothing to do with this photo. I'll explain in a second because it comes from a place I love dearly. But my staff picked this. I didn't. It's from Brett Huckrider, and it comes from Fire Island, New York. In fact, in Ocean Beach. And Brett writes, it's a great start to 2022. Look at that water. Look at that sky. Look where the sun is setting. That's a definite winter sun, if you know Fire Island, in terms of its direction. The beautiful thing about Fire Island sunsets is they're inspired by Maxfield Parrish, for those of you who remember him. And there you have it. Beautiful sunset on a winter day. So congratulations, Brett. If you got a photograph that you think qualifies as the photo of the week, send it in. I promise you, so you don't think this is rigged, there'll be no more photos of the week from Fire Island. This is it for 2022. One and done. But we love it. We absolutely love it. Okay, let's go back to some of your questions. LA to Israel direct. Well, they used to have a nonstop. I'll find out if it's coming back. I'll get back to you on that. Okay. Colleen says, where is the photo taken? Actually, Ocean Beach in Fire Island in New York. For those of you who don't know it, Fire Island is a national seashore. It's about 50 miles east of Manhattan. You get across a 13-mile bay called the Great South Bay. You take a ferry to get there. Other than emergency vehicles, there are no cars on Fire Island, which is great. You get around by bicycle or pulling a small wagon, walking or swimming or biking. It's only about 32 miles long. It never gets more than a third of a mile wide. About 19 communities on Fire Island. Ocean Beach is the more commercial of them, and it's one of them. So now you know where it is. Have I taken the Newark to Singapore flight? I have. That's why I call it an 8-movie flight. Phyllis says, can I name one single favorite place you've been? I cannot. And I'm not being cavalier about it. I literally cannot. I have a list of many of them. Peter says, and by the way, my metric for my favorite places might surprise you. It's based on only one thing: where I sleep the best. Think about it. Where you sleep the best is where you think the best. It's where you create the best. It's where you love the best. It's where you aspire to come back to every time. You gauge all your other destinations against that place. So think about where you sleep the best outside of your own bed at home. And chances are that's one of your favorite places. Peter says, is that in my volunteer fire department jurisdiction? It is. I'm in a community, 2 communities over on Fire Island, where I'm a volunteer fireman. I've been so since I've been 18, and we mutually aid with Ocean Beach all the time. They help us, we help them, and there you have it. Okay, where are we here? Patty says, Peter, you owned a home in Thailand. I did for 25 years. I actually built it in 1990. It was finished in 1992. And 3.5 years ago, I sold it. It was a great 25-year run. I regret nothing of it. It was the best. And right on the river, right on the Chao Phraya. You cannot beat that. All right. Lorena says, Kenya, listening to the hyena yip at night. Best night's sleep. There we go. What are you were lulled to sleep by hyenas? Wow. We have to talk about that. And Joyce says her favorite place is Grand Island, Nebraska. Interesting choice. Elizabeth says, will I have any books for sale at the Los Angeles Travel Show? Will I be signing? I know there'll be bookstores there. They'll have my books, and yes, I'll be signing. That reminds you, that's on March 12th and 13th at the Los Angeles Convention Center. And this weekend, I'll be in Washington, D.C. at the Washington Convention Center, right there in the district. I'll be speaking there on Saturday. That's the 26th, 2 days from today. So if you're in the Washington, D.C. area, come on by, and we'll continue this conversation. Let's go to some of the questions you sent in. Okay, Kurt says, do I think the USA and Canadian government are close to agreeing on getting cruises restarted in a way that will allow people that love Vancouver to also enjoy that stop again? And the answer is a definitive yes. Canada is actually moving much faster now and getting rid of some of their requirements. Keep in mind, they closed their ports. They're still closed right now to cruise ships. But nobody wants to be without a revenue in summer, especially in the Alaska cruise season. And my guess is within the next 3 weeks, you will see Canada reopening their ports with certain restrictions, of course, but it's going to happen. And you'll be able to cruise up there. And remember, the reason why you stopped at Vancouver was something called the Jones Act, or the Passenger Vessel Act, which required any vessel, any ship not registered in the U.S. to stop in a second port between 2 U.S. ports. It was originally designed to protect the American merchant marines. They'd always have to unload and offload boats. And that's why all the ships going to Canada had to stop. I mean, all the ships going to Alaska, always had to stop in either Vancouver or Prince Rupert on the way up to Juneau. And that's why I did it, right? You couldn't go from Seattle to Hawaii without stopping in Canada because it violated the act. We have a waiver in the act that was signed by President Biden, and that is allowing these ships to be able to sail should Canada reopen on that part of the world. And Mike says they will. Dennis says, can I comment on my favorite U.S. train trip or some options that you think I value? Yeah, I'm a huge fan of trains, even Amtrak, don't get wrong, even though they've gone through 4 CEOs in 6 years, gives you an idea of some of the leadership challenges there. But Amtrak has had great ridership numbers during the pandemic. They're bringing back some of their long-haul trains, which is great. I wish they'd improve their dining service, but that's another story for another time. One of my favorite trains on Amtrak is the original Southern Crescent. Anybody know where that goes? It starts at New York's Penn Station, makes a stop in Washington, and then heads south and going through parts of America you've only read about, most of you have never experienced, and ends up the next night in New Orleans. A great trip. I love that train. I also love the Zephyr, which you can get at Denver's Union Station and head all the way to the West Coast. Both those trips I love. So there you have it. Susan says, if I have a booster, does it have to be less than 270 days old? I got a booster in October 2021 and want to travel to Portugal in October 2022. Well, guess what? You're going to have to get another booster. That 270-day rule in almost every country in the world. Some other countries like Israel have reduced it to 180 days. So it's gone from 9 months to 6 months. We're going to get some direction from the CDC within the next 10 days on that second booster shot. So stay tuned. Nancy, can you talk about Croatia? Is it open for tourists? Croatia has always been open. It never closed. And in fact, we've done a couple of our television specials there for the Travel Detective during the pandemic. So the answer is it's open. You don't have to be a demented Game of Thrones fan to go, and you'll have a good time. But don't just go to Dubrovnik. Take a look at everywhere else you can go and nearby, right? Montenegro, Split, Istria. I mean, there's some great places. Okay. Danielle, how are the airlines allowed to deny boarding of a person with a new passport less than 6 months when the country to visit doesn't have that restriction? I don't think you've got that one right. Here's what I've said. If you have less than 6 months validity on your passport, right? Not a new passport, your regular passport, most airlines won't take you because most countries won't accept you. They don't want the liability of having you there with no passport that's valid. So anybody watching me right now, let's be real here. If you've got less than 9 months of validity, don't wait. Go get a new passport now. Do it now before the summer rush. Remember, it's good for 10 years. All right. Gina says, I missed your answer on Italy dropping the COVID entry requirements. Will they do as France did? Yes, they will. It's happening. Sarah says, still trying to get to Brazil to fish the Amazon. Trip is planned for September. What are you seeing for Brazil? Right now, I'm not seeing a lot of good stuff in Brazil. They're still not managing this well, but September is 6 months away, and hopefully by then you'll be able to catch fish. Melissa, why are hotels in Miami so expensive right now? Here's the answer. Because everybody's going to Florida. They're all escaping, right? Even before spring break and Easter. That's why. But you know what? Look at South Beach, then avoid South Beach, right? Go somewhere else. Or if you want to do South Beach, do 4 blocks away from the main drag, right? You don't have to stay on Collins. You don't. Move away, right? Everybody's going to Florida, though, and that's what's happening. They're not just visiting, they're staying. Okay. Arlene says, I read that Europe is mandating visas in 2023 from Americans. Won't this hinder their tourism from us? I like to book on a whim sometime. No, it won't hinder. It's a new visa requirement. They've been thinking about it for a while. It'll be in addition to your regular passport. But once you have it, you're good to go anytime you want, even though you say like you got to go on a whim. So there you have it. All right, everybody. Some more housekeeping here. Remember, April 18th, the week of April 18th, we're premiering the Royal Tour of Tanzania with the President. Starting on April 21st is when it goes on the air. Check your local listings on PBS. And if you can't see it there, it's available on Amazon Prime and Apple TV+. It's an amazing story, an amazing woman president who has a remarkable story to tell. Of course, Travel Detective resuming in about 2 months, our season 7 coming back on the air. And of course, our radio show, Eye on Travel on CBS every Saturday from a different somewhere in the world. And that includes this Saturday as well. So I look forward to hearing you on the radio, or as Charles Osgood likes to say, seeing you on the radio. And in the meantime, any other questions you've got, you know what to do. Email me to peter@petergreenberg.com and we'll answer either online or on the air. I will see you next Thursday, everybody, from another location somewhere around the world. I'll keep it a surprise. But until then, be safe, and let's get our thoughts and prayers for our friends in Ukraine. It's not a pretty situation, and it's threatening to get worse by the hour. Fingers crossed on all counts for them. And we'll have more about that, of course, on our newsletter and on our radio show, and of course, next week when I join you again. Until then, everybody, be safe. We'll talk to you then.